And welcome back to another edition of the MLB Inside the Diamond podcast. I am your host, Tom Johnston. I am joined by LaMarr Fields. How you doing?
Pretty good yourself.
Not too bad. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. Can't complain. Yours?
It wasn't too bad. Really got a lot done, got a lot of accomplished, even quote unquote having the day off and everything, but I still chose to do stuff. So it's just, hey, felt like keeping myself busy. But anyway, big week. A lot of interesting things are actually starting to take place in the Major League Baseball offseason. And by that, I mean some of the biggest free agents. A lot of reports start to swindle
Mm-hmm.
about where they're going to be going and stuff. And one person I really want to pay attention to right now is Carlos Correa. He really did a lot of great things for the Minnesota Twins this year. The Minnesota Twins really liked him. A lot of people actually thought that he is actually going to be a Twin next year, but he's actually going to try to test free agency. He opted out of his contract, his current contract, which I know was for about 3 years. And it was like $105 million deal. And, you know, where I want to get with this is for a guy like Correa, he's going to, once opening day in 2023 starts, he'll be 28. What kind of long-term deal do you think he is looking for? And do you think the Minnesota Twins are going to try to outdo any team they keep?
I don't know. Probably looking for 28. Probably looking for maybe a 7 to 10 year deal. Maybe I don't know. He won't. No, he wants some stuff. I know he didn't want to keep signing 1 year deals, so he's gonna want some type of deal with some stability to it. I don't know if Minnesota gonna be that team to give it to him though. But I mean, I haven't really heard no. I've been looking around trying to see who've been interested in Korea, but I haven't really heard seen nothing yet.
So I'm looking
But
at
also, but I just
MLB.com.
read, I just read,
Yeah.
see something right now. It says Twins engaged in Carlos Correa on a long-term contract, but they not get answers for months. This is from the Star Tribune. Yeah, so who knows, man? This baseball free agency is weird.
You know what, though? Let's put it this way, okay? I think based off of what he produced this year, because he opted out of the final 2 years. So I guess, like, in some ways, the 3 year contract was essentially 1 year that had an option to pick up years 2 and 3, but I guess he declined. So, in a lot of ways, though, I mean, I could see him signing a long term deal. I think, let's put it this way, okay? I think what he might try to be setting to the Twins is if you can offer me a 3 year deal already with, say, 100+ million to it, and you see what I can produce, because he had very good numbers this year, and stuff like that. I think what Carlos Correa is trying to say is, hey, if you see the value in me and you've already paid me a year and you see this, but you've done this and this is kind of like a short-term deal, you could probably stretch that out to at least 6 to 8 or so years, and maybe add a few more dollar signs and all that behind it. But I don't even think it's necessarily just because of that. I just think Carlos Correa knows the value that he brings to the table as a Major League Baseball player. And, guys around this time in their career, whenever you get to like that age 28 and on, they really say your prime takes place between 28 to like 32 in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's really trying to like get that deal to where it covers him through his prime. So it's just like, you know what, I'm locked up, because I mean, I'm with him. I don't really want to keep signing 1 year deals, because it's just like, okay, the more you sign me to a 1 year deal, it's more rather, you have to pay me more within that 1 year deal, depending on,
Yeah,
your age and certain things. But it's just like, I guess sometimes players trying to send a message to the team is, you're going to be paying more for 1 year versus you making this a long-term deal. And even though there might be a lot of money involved, you're actually making out on the deal because it's a chunk every like year. And that number can be a variable, but in some ways it might be cheaper for the team to do that versus just signing. To be honest with you, I would have locked Carlos Correa up last year, long term, and would have just been done with it because he already knows what he can produce. And, having played with the Astros and stuff, he's prominently, used to the big stage too. But I just feel like, Correa really wants to make this decision the best one for him, his family, and all that, because it's just like, I want to play somewhere for a long time. Like, y'all know the value I bring, or else. Because let's put it this way. In some ways, what Correa could be saying is the Twins already somewhat know my value because they were willing to go offer me a 3-year, $100+ million contract in the first place. So obviously, they see the value that's there, but he's just saying, I want longer term. And hey, listen, I'm all for it, stuff like that. I mean, he's a good player, but just reading this article or just reading this news report from MLB.com, it states that the Twins are for sure a contender, and they say that they honestly might see them offering something that surpasses Joe Mauer's 8-year, $184 million deal. And I think I see that happening too. I mean, you already see the guy firsthand what he can do. And then there's the Cubs, and then there's the Phillies. They also have your Giants listed in the article too. I mean, do you honestly think that could be a move the Giants make? Because there's a lot of speculation that, and like you said all this time, the Giants didn't spend a lot last year at all, virtually nothing. They stayed put. Like, should they utilize this offseason to really make up for that? Not just make one signing, but multiple signings. Just say, you know what, we got the money, we can spend it, and just make up for it.
Yeah, they need to do something. Carrera be good, shortstop for him. Still got Crawford there though, so I don't know how it would work out. But if you got a chance to get a player like Carrera, you sign him and figure it out. They had some good. I heard they had good conversations with Aaron Judge a couple of days ago, so we'll see how that turns out.
Would you be surprised if the Giants actually signed both Correa and Judge?
Oh yeah, big time. I'd be surprised they signed just one of them.
But I mean, I only say that because, the big contracts that both of those players could command in. But reading more into why the Giants might be in play is because Brandon Crawford has a year or so left on his deal.
Yeah,
he might be considered moving to second base. And that's why they say, it would be a mutually benefiting fit because shortstop would be open.
Yeah.
You know what, though? I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe that's what the Giants were actually, it's hard to say what teams are doing, what's going on with executives in the office and stuff and the ownership and GM. But in some ways, I would at least pinpoint that, maybe that's what the Giants were really waiting for. Like, they're in a baseball market. A lot of people support San Francisco baseball. And I honestly – now, don't get me wrong. I would honestly consider that like the craziest move to do. But I mean, and evidently, sometimes though you would really have to weigh the pros and the cons. Like, is it really worth signing two players? Because what was it? Those are the only two players that they signed. But it's just like, okay, they're also inked to big deals. So it's like, you could have, say, on your current roster, like two guys that are eating up maybe a third or so of your payroll and, stuff like that. I mean, it's hard to say, but that would be kind of crazy. Because, here's the other guy I want to talk about, and that's Aaron Judge, because we know a lot of people are in on these sweepstakes, at least that matter. He's been making news about going to the Giants too. He is, I believe he is from California. So that plays a lot into it. But in some ways though, I think there'd be a little bit less pressure on Judge if he were to go that route. But also, it's the simple fact that he's already played in the biggest market that baseball has to offer. And on top of that, in a lot of ways, he's kind of a fit for anywhere. It's just a matter of what team is willing to fork out the contracts for him long term. I mean, now here's the true question you really got to ask yourself is, do you believe that him chasing a single season like American League home run record per se and having 62 or so, do you think that actually might take a toll on future seasons of production? Because we can all just about guess how much it takes to really hit 35, 40 plus homers in a year, but to hit 60.
Yeah, he's 60, but you can't go straight. I'm not expecting him to hit 60 every year. 35, 40, I would be realistic with his power and if he stay healthy. I'm just team. Just I don't know, man. I hope that I just wonder if the Giants made an offer or what, or they just had talks and conversations, or did they make an offer? We're be real quiet.
Maybe some teams want to keep it quiet right now. I mean, maybe they did offer him something and nobody just is speaking on it. I mean, we
Yeah,
really, I mean, as much as we like to
yeah,
hypothetically speak and,
yeah,
say what we think is going on, the only real issue is Judge and the Giants know what's going on, or Judge and the
yeah.
Yankees do as well. But I mean, I'll be honest with you, okay, with what Judge might be looking for, you know, maybe the Giants or the Yankees are really the only team that's going to be willing to offer him that, because truth
yeah.
be told, we've seen in the past the Giants are willing to spend, the Yankees are definitely willing to spend. That's really not.
Well, we ain't seen the Giants willing to spend because they don't. But they
I mean, but my
ain't spent
point
on
is
nobody.
they've had talented players. They've had
Yeah,
payroll up there in the past, which,
yeah,
regardless of what happened last off season or this year, it has shown that in the past they're willing to spend. So, they're one of the teams that is willing to spend the money for Judge if it came about. But, in a lot of ways, though, it's tough to say. But hey, I'm all for it, just because some owner thinks that they're valuable enough to do it and they're willing to
hmm
okay the GM to sign it, and that's that. But you know, I'm really interested on your intake on this, because I know we've talked about long-term deals, but especially with Carlos Correa and potentially Judge. Based off of how owners previously have done long-term deals, what do you think might be considered the newest long-term deal? Because we've seen how 10-year contracts sometimes really don't pan out, and then it's just you're really stuck with the guy for the entire contract and then having to eat that money per se. So it's do you think that in the future, what might happen is that long-term contracts actually might be 5 to 7 years?
I just depends on what age it is, what age you are when you get into 10-year deals. I think if you're in your mid-20s, I would say yeah, go ahead and sign a 10-year deal if the player's good and outstanding player, like what the Seattle did with Rodriguez. Now, if they're in their late 20s, early 30s, no on a 10-year deal. That's why it's kind of touchy with Correa. I mean, 28, you sign a 10-year deal, you're gonna be in his late 30s. You think it's
38.
yeah, so that's where it gets sketchy. That's where the Angels made the mistakes at with Pujols and them. They was too old for them 10-year deals.
Oh yeah, they
Yeah,
were definitely too old per se, and I mean it goes to show, sometimes certain long term deals are just bad. I think it showed it in that case, and stuff. But it's actually kind of funny because they also say that potentially the Red Sox are in on Judge too, and so might be the Phillies, and that's another thing. There have been several names linked to the Philadelphia Phillies this year, well, this offseason, Trey Turner being one. But I want to point to another Philadelphia Philly, and that's Bryce Harper. He had surgery, and now this guy's going to be missing some time. Based off of what we've seen, do you think that the Phillies can balance stuff out for the short term while Harper does recover? Or do you think that this may kind of set the Phillies back a bit?
was Harper having what
He
was
had, I believe he had Tommy John surgery from what the
yeah.
reports show.
If he having Tommy John surgery, pretty much done for all pretty much
Well, no, they said there's a possibility for him. Like he's gonna miss a couple months, but like he'll be playing next year.
well, he ain't a pitcher, so
Yeah,
that's what if he's a pitcher, he'd be out for the whole season.
yeah, but it's just I
Yeah,
think the Phillies are going to make some serious moves this summer. I think that they're going to sign Trey Turner and the whole 9 yards.
they better get started.
Oh, hey, they might be. It's just free agency with this kind of just it goes up and it goes down rather. But that's just really it for all baseball. Just because there's just not a lot to talk about at this time of year with baseball. We talked about the awards, but. Other than that, it's really waiting for certain free agency moves to make its way into the picture. And we really haven't seen that. I mean, all we can really do is speculate. But college football, you know what, LaMarr? I will never in my life again, as long as I do live, which should be a pretty long time to begin with. But I'll never say never in college football because yesterday, like this whole weekend proved never say never. It got started on Thursday with the Egg Bowl. Mississippi State beats Ole Miss. Both are now 8-4. I can almost rest assured you I'm not an SEC fan, but most people that are SEC fans that pay attention to Ole Miss and Mississippi State, they would probably tell you that they didn't anticipate that happening. It's kind of crazy how that always happens. But besides that, Oregon lost. And on top of that, Ohio State loses for a second straight year. This time it's in Columbus. To point over that, Penn State win, and they won convincingly, even though there was a period of time where, Michigan State hung into the game. But besides that, Florida State wins. USC wins. But here's the biggest shocker of them all. LSU loses, and Clemson loses to South Carolina. And I think that in some ways it was a testament to truly tell people in college football that crazy things can happen at any time because let's be realistic. Penn State needed a few teams ahead of them, a.k.a. Clemson and LSU, to lose again. And they both lost. Now LSU's going to the SEC championship game. They'll be like maybe the first or second time that a 3 seed has actually gone to a division championship game or a conference championship game for that matter. But I think it goes to show that you really never can say never. Much prime example is the Big Ten West. That conference, the division in the West came down to the very last minute and Iowa lost. And then on top of that, Minnesota beat Wisconsin. And, I just think whenever you look at this stuff, everyone could say, oh, that's not going to happen. But I think college football has done so much, especially in just this season, that it shows it can and it will happen. And, I really just want to get your thoughts, especially about the games that I just mentioned. How do you really see at least the top 10 be shaken up so far? And the teams that were currently ranked, say 5th through 8th per se, where do you see those teams falling? But more importantly, where do you see teams like Tennessee and Penn State who actually won? Where do you see them moving up to?
Let's see. I think the top 4 are going to be Georgia, Michigan, USC and TCU. They're going to be that's going to be USC and TCU. 5 going to be, I think, who was 6 last week? No, TCU. Yeah, 6. 5 might be Alabama.
Well,
yeah, 5 might be Alabama. They won and they was at 7.
Yeah,
and
that's
LSU
true.
lost, and yeah, it could be 5 or 6.
That's true. I mean, here's what I tell people is I'm trying to get the rankings up anyway. I don't even pay attention to the AP anymore because really what only matters is the college football rankings. So I'm actually going to pull those up. But here's what I want to tell people is this, okay? It's just ironic how, teams do lose when you least expect it to. And then it's just like, oh my God, it actually happened. Like, I'm going to be honest with you, South Carolina beating Clemson. I think it happened not only because South Carolina might just played a little bit better, but South Carolina also just didn't want to, like, think that, oh, last week was a fluke because you beat Tennessee at home. No, it wasn't a fluke. Like, we could beat Clemson too, and it happened. But much like with Michigan, Ohio State, I think what the biggest and here's the crazy part is, I was out and about yesterday up at Beaver Stadium talking to people. One of the big games we were all talking about was Michigan, Ohio State, and I told people, I says, I'm not even gonna like sugarcoat it to you. Michigan's gonna win. And everyone says, no way. Like, I don't see it happening. Every single one of those people that told me that, they came back around and says, you know what, you were right, because Michigan like, they physically outplayed Ohio State in a couple different areas. And I just said, listen, physicality is going to be talent no matter what, because I don't care how much talent you got. If you're the more physical football team, you have already set yourself apart because the physicality part's going to win. And I anticipate the game being very close because you see, here's the ordeal, okay? If I'm really the committee and I'm looking at all this, if I had to say a final, like the top four for the college football playoff, I put Michigan and Ohio State in, and here's why, okay? Ohio State has a ranked win against Notre Dame at home, and Notre Dame was ranked higher than they were from yesterday, because yesterday they were ranked 15th. I think they were ranked number 5 in the first week of this regular season.
Yeah.
But here's the ordeal is you beat a 5th-ranked Notre Dame team. It's not Notre Dame's fault that they lost to Marshall and they lost to USC and they lost to whoever else. It's just it's not their fault. But whenever you face them, I think that's what the committee is trying to make a statement at is where you face the team is what matters the most. Yes, the team might fall or go higher, but it's where you face them. And I think that for Ohio State, that's more telling. Now, they also beat a top 15 Penn State team on the road. And I think that also makes a lot with strength of schedule and all that stuff because, you have 2 top 10, or at least top 15 victories, but one's at home and one's on the road, which they value that. Here's where I say TCU doesn't make it. You're in the Big 12, and I get it.
TCU win next week. They're getting in. I mean,
I don't know about that.
They get in 12-0. 12-0 beats a 1-loss team. All you gotta do is win. If TCU win, go 12-0 in the championship game. They're getting in. Ain't no way they're not getting in with these other teams got losses. No.
But here's also the reason why I say Michigan.
They ain't gonna drop them for not losing the game. If you
they might not.
If you in the top 4 and you ain't lost, you're gonna be in. I don't care what the computers say. They're gonna be, if they win next week, they're gonna be in at the 4th thing. Ohio State probably drop down to 5, maybe.
Because
but the thing is this: Ohio State don't play again. So
yeah,
I got you. Ohio State 11-1. I'm 12-0.
Let's put it this way: pull up TCU's schedule and tell me
how. But that I know what you're saying, but they number 4. They ain't gonna get punished for winning games.
Listen, though, okay. I'm not saying they're not going to punish them.
If they would have got punished, they would have got punished last week for barely beating Baylor.
Yeah, but see though that's probably the most quality opponent that they could face in the Big 12.
If TCU and USC win, the top 4 are going to be is set the way it's going to be.
It's going to be interesting. It really is because
the TCU still playing a championship game in Ohio State sitting at home next week.
Yeah, I mean, no, I get it. I get it. Usually teams that like don't play a game, usually in like a bye week,
Now
Like, they don't get punished to move down.
now if they lose next week, then they out.
But I did have the previous rankings up for the college football playoff. Alabama was 7, Clemson was 8, Oregon was 9. So emphatically, LSU and Oregon lose. They evidently drop out of the top 10. Oregon, I mean, not Oregon, but Tennessee did win. But I feel like, Tennessee and Penn State will move up. The AP rankings came out. As much as I like to say they don't really matter, they don't. But if it's any indication, Penn State will be moving into a top 10 finish. And, here's what I tell them is a New Year's 6 is probably secured. I mean, whatever way you want to look at it, because evidently, you have a Pac-12 team and an ACC team that have already lost. Now, granted, you would still have, but see, here's the thing: you also have LSU that lost too, and LSU was 5, so that's actually huge. To where you already had 2 teams that were ranked above you by like 1 or 2 spots. They lost, so you kind of move ahead of them. But it's also like you got to ask yourself, okay, here's where I say I think Penn State finishes ahead of LSU. They have a common opponent in Auburn, but here's where I think it hits different. And just hear me out when I say this. Auburn is still in the SEC. I am sick and tired of SEC fans bragging about how great the SEC is in football and the whole 9 yards. But then outside of anything but Bama or Georgia, they want to say, well, that's Auburn. But they're still in the SEC. They're still in the conference you hype up the most. And to make the matters worse, or to make the matters better in favor of Penn State, Penn State's the first Big Ten team to ever go in SEC country and beat an SEC team. Like, I don't care how anybody wants to put that. Say what Auburn is all you want. But that is a statement. If you think of all the programs in the Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan, and stuff. I mean, I know that there's really only 2, but those are some of the other top tier brands. But they haven't gone to the SEC country yet, and Penn State has. That actually makes a statement, because now you can't say, oh, the Big Ten doesn't travel to the SEC, or oh, the Big Ten can't win an SEC country, because Penn State proved it. And, say what you want to say about Auburn, but I just have a hard time, like, putting it together that people want to brag about a college football conference, but then anytime you really want to bring up the likes of, say, a Tennessee, minus probably this year, but you want to bring up a Tennessee, a Kentucky, even a Florida for that matter, or, like LSU, they can have a good football program if they recruit right and everything. But if all you're really going to say is, besides Georgia and Bama, if like you're in the SEC, oh, well, you beat Missouri, but they're still in the conference that you are hyping up so much. I mean, you really can't say that that's the premier college football conference if all you're really going to say is, well, if you're not Bama or Georgia, you're nothing. Then truth be told, your conference ain't nothing. To me, I would say the Big Ten would probably be the superior one, because the Big Ten really has 3 really good top FBS programs in one division. Michigan State's probably going to be working their way up there soon. I was soon meaning like maybe not really next year, but they will be soon. But you also got other programs on the rise too. Iowa can be good. If Wisconsin gets a good running game, they are ultimately a well-established program and stuff. But my whole point is, to me, 3 FBS programs in one division in a conference that really can like finish with 10 or so wins and this, that, the other. And you got the SEC that just claims 2. 3's greater than 2. I mean, apples to apples, oranges to oranges. But that's why I think, if anything, LSU gets ranked lower than Penn State, but LSU's still in the top 10, is because of that. But, if you ultimately think, look at who LSU lost to, and it was to Texas A&M on the road. And truth be told, that kind of looks like a bad loss to the Tigers, just because, we know the bumpy ride A&M has had, but like you lost on the road to an unranked A&M, and you're number 5.
Either way, it's a good season for LSU.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but
nobody expected them to be this high. And next year they get some more transfer recruits. They can be back up there. I mean, they playing in the SEC championship game in one of the toughest conferences. I mean, no reason to hang their head. Like, of course they would want to win, but hey,
saying though, is like you want to talk about wins and losses, like
and for Penn State need to quit worrying about playing SEC schools, and they need to learn to figure out how to beat Ohio State and Michigan before they talk about doing anything.
Well, let's put it this way, Kay. I emphatically agree. But allow me to actually say this though. If you really want to, get kind of technical in that aspect, if Sean Clifford doesn't throw 3 interceptions against Ohio State, Penn State wins. Because here's the thing, okay? I swear, like, no disrespect to Michigan, but I think they honestly have to give Penn State a high five and a thank you, because if it wasn't for Penn State playing Ohio State the way that they did, Penn State inevitably, showed and exposed Ohio State's defense for what it can have, and it showed that there are major flaws. And I think a lot of people were paying attention to that game, and they really said, guess what? That's what we need. And Penn State was able to show that. And, I think just a lot of teams have to thank that, because it's what happened and stuff. But I mean, allow me to just say this, I really don't think that Ohio State did anything to really hurt their chances, because they have quality wins, and, to the committee that matters. But let's be realistic though. There have been instances in the past where, teams have followed through on what the committee has said, and the committee really, to me, the committee really doesn't even know its own rules, because they really haven't been consistent with it. But inevitable shape, I think LSU's still a top 10 team. They might fall to number 10, but in a lot of ways, listen, Penn State did what they needed to do. There were teams that did what they needed to do, but it's crazy how even on the last week of college football, you just look at it and just say, wow. I mean, let's put it this way. What are the 2 games that stood out to you in rivalry week, and why?
2 games that stood out? Oregon State, and Oregon State, and the Michigan Ohio State game. Oregon was up 34 to 10 or 31 to 10, something like that. Crazy. And the Oregon State came back and won. That was crazy.
Yeah, that is. If it was for me, I would say it's Michigan, Ohio State, just because of how the game went, but then how Michigan started to take control of it, and how JJ McCarthy kind of just proved a lot of people wrong in the first place and said, I'm good, and this, that, the other. But I also think that in some ways, what really stood out was the Clemson and South Carolina game. Just because of, now I really didn't get to watch a lot of it, but I did watch the highlights per se. And it's crazy how, people just, I don't know, they just look at South Carolina weird, but yet again, South Carolina has beat both Clemson and, they beat Tennessee. And, that's a statement when you could say you've beat, ranked teams like that, because both teams that they basically beat in back-to-back weeks have been top 10 teams. So, they have 2 top 10 victories. And regardless if both came at home or whatever the case you may have it, it's just a simple fact that they still beat 2 top 10 teams, and they beat them in back-to-back weeks. I mean, that's a statement victory. But that's also what I love about college football. It really shows that, nothing's really over until it's over. But it also goes to show, you don't expect things to go in one person's way or another, because what was it, Notre Dame would have beat USC, then the whole thing gets flipped upside down, because then now it's just okay, well, 4 of your top 10 teams lost, or per se, and then you have all these teams that won, and everybody else gets moved up. But I honestly think this is going to be this is going to be a very interesting conference championship week. But not only that, but it's going to be a very interesting week overall, with how everything's going to turn out, and then your bowl matchups. One thing's for certain is a lot of things went Penn State's way, and they will evidently have a very solid chance now of potentially securing a New Year's Six bowl. At this point, I'm pretty sure if you're in the top 10, you're pretty much safe for a New Year's Six per se. depending on, what contracts are worked out, the what and stuff. But it's just crazy, to see LSU kind of do that and Texas A&M to do what they did. But it's what college football is all about, and that is why I like it. But rivalry week certainly impressed. It certainly had a lot of fans, on one side being like, wow, and others like just happy. But that's what I love about college football. And then we turn to conference championship weekend, and it gets crazy because I believe it's USC and it is Utah, if I'm not mistaken.
Ain't no.
And then it's Clemson and North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's Purdue, Minnesota, or Michigan. And then I'm unaware of the other two of who is taking place.
TCU, Kansas State, Big 12, American Athletic Championship, UCF, and Tulane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's going to be another interesting topic to talk about down the line next week.
There ain't no game because that Utah USC game ain't no gimme. Utah's good.
Exactly, that's my whole point, and that's why I might say,
and also Kansas State TCU ain't no gimme either for TCU.
Exactly.
So now let's say
both teams are fighting for the same opportunity, or fighting for a championship
and
a chance to impress.
Now it'd be really get interesting if they both lose. Then you'd be like, whoo. Yeah.
Never say never.
If they both lose, I would love to see. I would love to see what they come up with if TCU and USC lose. It'd be really interesting.
Oh, it would be. Yeah. But that's going to do it for this edition of the MLB Inside the Diamond podcast and a bit of college football. I'm your host, Tom Johnston, and for LaMarr Fields, we will see you guys next week.